So we're going to talk about our next trial, flagleaf fungicides. So the objective for this trial was to determine the effects of just adding a third flagleaf fungicide application at flagleaf, looking at a few maybe varieties more susceptible to leaf diseases and maybe the varieties more resistant to leaf diseases. So I've got our treatments for this trial in the table below. So our control treatment was doing fungicides at tillering and at early flowering for that scab application. Looking at propiconazole or tilt earlier on, and Prosaro at scab timing. And then our treatment was adding in Preaxor at the flagleaf. Looking at in 2020, we were looking at 9590, which is maybe a little bit more susceptible to leaf diseases, and Valda, which is maybe a little bit more resistant to leaf diseases. And so looking at just a quick overview of what our individual 2020 locations, looks like we had about half of our sites had a significant increase in yield with our flagleaf application. All the Valda locations, which I thought was interesting since that was the more resistant variety to leaf disease. And taking a look at our combined yields across the years. So Mayville and Spitfire, these are from the previous 2 years data. Mayville is very susceptible to leaf diseases, rated one of the lowest on the U of M disease rating scales. So it had a significant increase with that extra flagleaf fungicide application, as did Valda. And when we were looking at the combined locations across years and varieties. So just kind of throwing it all together, an average increase of 2.7 bushels an acre with that third fungicide application. And a quick look at protein content effect here. No effects on protein content with that smaller bushel increase. Grain moisture content. So we did have some significant differences in grain moisture content in Mayville, Valda, and when combined. So when those fields that were yielding higher, those third fungicide applications, keeping the plants a little bit greener, healthier, a little bit longer into the season, enabling the plants to accumulate more starch and yield a little bit more, being about maybe up to a half a point wetter at harvest. But I think the important thing to note here is that we were only about maybe a half a point wetter at harvest and not 2 or 3 points higher moisture at harvest. So we were getting a little yield jump there without delaying our harvest with that extra fungicide application. Then a quick look at test weight. We had minor increase in test weight with the fungicide application, but not too big, not something we're going to focus on at the moment. And then didn't do a formal economic analysis like we had with the seeding rate data, but just a quick partial profit look at covering our costs for the application. So here in the middle of the table, we've got our yields, our combined yields that we just showed in the previous charts for the different varieties, and our significant increases in yield. Our application cost, we calculated at $14.50. So that was based on $6.50 an acre for Preaxor, 2 ounces of Preaxor, plus an $8 generic application cost. And so you'll have to kind of look at this with your own application costs in mind. Maybe if you're looking at using a different fungicide, or if your equipment and labor costs are a little bit lower or higher. We chose Preaxor for the flagleaf application to make sure we were rotating our modes of action to not encourage resistance in the leaf disease races. And so looking at that, Valda showed quite a big difference in response to that extra fungicide application and had quite a bit net revenue or gain from that. Whereas when the results were significant, Didn't want to call the yields any different, so I just called it as your out, that 1450 for an application. And looking at, Mayville and the combined analyses, our average yield response was maybe a little bit lower, maybe not quite covering our cost of application. But if your cost of application is maybe down at $10, then now you're breaking even or back in the black. So just something to think about with that. Pause a minute for any questions. And if anybody viewing here was able to listen to Grant Meering talk at the Small Grains Update meeting last week, he had talked about intensive wheat management, and two of the things that he had covered were making sure you're seeding at the right seeding rates. So university recs are, that 1.4, which is what Kyle was talking about, trying to stay around that 1.4 million plants per acre, and then adding fungicides. So getting that, at least 2 or 3 fungicide applications on your wheat, really helping to push your wheat yield. And so that's something that we're seeing in this trial too. But